I was just a single father struggling to feed my child by fishing in the ocean every morning. I never thought that night, when the waves carried the body of a pregnant woman into my arms, my life would change forever. I didn't know who she was, but the look in her eyes, full of pain, full of fear, made me unable to look away. And when the baby was born, everything got even crazier, because this was no ordinary baby. She was the heir to something that could destroy many people. It's morning in Avalon Bay, a small coastal town in southern England, where the sea speaks in cold whispers and the mist hangs over the pier like a lingering memory. Liam Kalen, 31, stands at the end of the old pier in his rubber, boots and worn parka. In his hand is a net rope still wet from last night's fishing. He's a nobody, just a single father who works as a part-time fisherman and a frozen fish delivery boy at the local supermarket. 2 years ago, his wife died in a car crash, leaving him with their young daughter, Maisie, now 5. Since then, Liam's life has changed. Every day has been about surviving, not living. He's lost his home, his steady job, even most of his friends, but he's never lost his passion for being a father. "Dad, will you be home before dinner?" Maisie asked, holding her rumpled bunny doll in her arms, standing in the doorway of their small rented house. Liam smiled tiredly. "I promise, sweetheart, and I'll bring your favorite, fish fingers." Maisie chuckled, and Liam kissed his daughter's forehead before heading toward his small boat, tied up at the edge of the harbor. The fog had yet to clear as he rowed out into the open sea, hoping to catch enough to last another week. The sea was hostile that day. The sky hung grey and the wind was ominous. But Liam was too used to uncertainty to care. He lowered his net, waited, and stared blankly at the horizon until night fell. As he headed back toward the dock, amidst the dark and the thickening fog, Liam heard a sound, a scream, faint, swallowed by the waves. He squinted. There were no other boats around, just him, the sea, and that sound again. A scream. Panic and instinct fused. He turned on the flashlight of his small boat, and there, amidst the raging waves, he saw something floating. Someone. Without hesitation, Liam jumped into the cold sea. His heart pounded, his body fought the biting temperature, but he kept swimming. His rough arms finally caught the figure, a young, heavily pregnant woman, soaked, unconscious, with bruises on her neck and hands. He dragged her body to the boat, checking for breathing. Still alive, but very weak. His eyes fluttered open, and he whispered in a barely audible voice, "Help me, please. Don't let him find me." And as Liam stared into her face, he knew one thing. This was no ordinary night. It was the night his life would change forever. Liam's small house stood at the end of a narrow street facing the sea, its roof low and its walls damp from the unforgiving winter. An old chandelier hung from the ceiling, swaying gently from the wind that came through the gaps in the windows. The woman lay on a worn sofa, wrapped in a thin blanket that had been dried in front of the fireplace. Her long black hair was still slightly damp, sticking to her temples, and the clothes she wore, an expensive evening gown that was now torn and dirty, did not match the environment she was stranded in. Liam sat not far from her, holding a cup of hot tea, his eyes never leaving her every heavy breath that came out of her chest. She hadn't said anything since she woke up, only occasionally glancing in Liam's direction, as if afraid to believe. "Would you like some tea?" Liam asked finally, trying to soften the atmosphere. The woman shook her head slowly. Her hands were clutching her swollen belly. Where am I?" Her voice was hoarse, as if she had been drowning in a long fear. "You're safe," Liam replied. "You're in Avalon Bay. I found you in the water last night. You were barely breathing." Tears flowed silently from the corners of the woman's eyes. She tried to sit up, but her body was too weak. I can't go back," she murmured. "He'll find me. He always does." Liam narrowed his eyes. "Who?" Who are you running from? The woman fell silent. Her eyes stared out the window, out at the sea that now looked calm, as if hiding all the secrets that had just been buried the night before. A man, she said finally. A man who told me he loved me. The father of this baby. He owns everything. He controls everyone. And when I told him I was keeping the baby, he changed. Liam's face hardened. He didn't need more details to know what kind of man the woman was referring to. A yacht, she said again, her voice shaking. He took me there, said we needed to talk. But then he pushed me. He wanted me to disappear. Liam sat there, for a moment, his chest tight. He looked at her with new eyes, not just a drowning victim, but someone being chased by death by someone who had never learned to love properly. Do you have a name? Liam asked carefully. She turned her head, slowly. Aria, she said softly. Aria Lennox. Liam nodded slowly, then stood. You're safe here, Aria, and I don't care who he is. He won't find you here. But outside the window of the house, a black SUV pulled up in the distance, on a gravel road that was rarely traveled by. And from inside the car, someone stared at the small house at the end of the promontory. Someone who knew Aria, and who wasn't finished with their revenge. The night grew darker in Avalon Bay. The cold wind blew strongly, carrying the scent of sea salt that pierced the skin. Inside Liam's small house, the atmosphere felt tense and silent, as if every second was waiting for something bad. Liam stood in front of the window, staring far away at the gravel road where the black SUV had stopped briefly earlier. His heart was full of anxiety, but he knew one thing. Aria should not be left alone. Meanwhile, Aria sat in the corner of the room, hugging her growing belly. Fear still haunted her eyes, but behind it was a glimmer of hope. Hope that Liam was not just a savior that night, but perhaps the only protector she could trust. Suddenly, the ringing of the phone broke the silence. Liam picked it up with trembling hands. Mr. Kalen, we know where she is, the deep voice of the man on the other end threatened. This ends tonight. You have no idea who you're messing with. Liam swallowed, feeling the pressure that he could not avoid. If you hurt her, I swear. The line went dead. Liam turned to Aria, trying to calm himself. They're coming for you. Aria shivered. I never wanted this, she whispered. The next few days became a never-ending game of suspense. Liam reinforced the doors and windows of his house, searching for a way to contact someone who could help. But in this small town, the security net was thin. One night, as Liam was inspecting the boats at the docks, a dark shadow emerged from behind the large ship. A tall man in a black suit, his face half hidden beneath a fedora. Looking for Aria? The man's voice was cold and menacing. Liam gripped the small knife he always carried with him. If you want trouble, you'll find me first, the man chuckled, a chilling sound in the silence of the night. You don't know who you're messing with, fisherman. He's powerful, CEO of the biggest company in London, and he will stop at nothing. Liam looked into the man's eyes. He knew this fight was bigger than him, and the fight to save Aria and her baby had only just begun. The days in Avalon Bay turned into a real nightmare for Liam and Aria. Liam, who had been living a simple life as a fisherman, began to feel the increasing pressure. Meanwhile, Aria, with her growing belly, lived in constant fear. One morning, as the sun began to rise, Liam took Aria to a small clinic in the center of Avalon. A friendly young doctor checked Aria's pregnancy and gave her vitamins and important advice to keep the baby in her womb healthy. However, the calm did not last long. As they left the clinic, two well-dressed men followed from a distance. Liam immediately realized the danger that lurked. Aria, we have to go immediately, he said in a low but firm voice. They drove to a dense pine forest on the outskirts of town, where Liam often retreated to think and seek peace. There, he felt a little safer, away from the hustle and bustle of the city and the prying eyes. In the forest, Aria opened her story more deeply. Before everything happened, I worked as a manager at a big company. That man's company, she said in a trembling voice. I thought he loved me, but it turned out it was all just a mask. Liam listened intently. He felt how fragile Arya's world was that had been hidden behind luxury and lies. We were engaged, Arya continued, but when I told him about my pregnancy, he was furious. He said I would ruin his reputation and ordered his men to get rid of me by any means. Liam clenched his fists. I will protect you. I will not let him take what is most precious from us. That night, the two of them sat under a sky full of stars in the middle of a quiet forest. Shadows of the past and threats of the future seemed to blend with the rustle of the wind that caressed the leaves. However, in Liam's heart, there was one strong determination to risk everything for Arya and the baby she was carrying. Shadows closing in. As time passed, the threat became more real. Liam and Arya knew they couldn't hide forever. The ruthless CEO was increasingly sending his henchmen to track them down. One cold night, a loud knock on the door made Liam's heart beat faster. He opened the door carefully and found two big men standing there, their faces covered by thick jackets. "We know you're hiding her," one of the men said harshly. "Hand over the woman and her child, or we won't hesitate to take action." Liam glared. "You'll have to get through me first." A fight was inevitable. With the strength that came from determination and love, Liam fought to defend his small home and protect Arya, who was heavily pregnant. However, this battle was only the beginning of a much bigger conflict. The next day, Arya decided to contact a private detective she had known before running away from her past. The detective was known to be strict and had a wide network. Liam and Arya met the detective in a small, dimly lit cafe, far from the hustle and bustle of the city. "You're in great danger," the detective said gravely. "The CEO is not only rich, but also has incredible power. He can move anyone to his will." Arya lowered her head, her voice shaking. "I'm scared, but I also want to fight. For my baby." Liam took Arya's hand. "We'll face this together." They knew the fight against power and injustice was not over, but they had already begun to strategize for hope and a better future. After meeting with a private detective, Liam and Arya began to devise a plan to combat the threat that haunted them. Although the world felt tough, they refused to give up. In a small room behind the cafe, the detective took out a map of the city and a list of names of people connected to the network of the cunning CEO. "We have to be careful. They have eyes and ears everywhere," the detective said, pointing to several points on the map. "But I have some contacts who can help us." Liam stared at the map with burning determination. "I don't have many choices, but to protect Arya and her child at all costs." Arya, although tired and afraid, contributed. "I know a few things about how that company works. I can help you understand their path." They also began to strategize, starting from collecting evidence, making a protection plan, to finding witnesses who dared to speak. However, the threat was never far away. One night, someone sent a text message to Liam's cell phone. "Stop now, or everything will be destroyed." Message made Liam even more convinced that they had to act immediately. Day by day, the plan began to be implemented. Liam began to contact his old friends from the fishing community, asking them to be vigilant and help if needed. On the other hand, Arya began to dare to contact the local media, hoping that the truth could be revealed to the public. Despite the tension and uncertainty, one thing was clear to them. Fighting this darkness was not only for themselves, but also for the future of the little baby growing in Arya's womb. The pressure was getting heavier on Liam and Arya. Attack after attack came, not only from the CEO's henchmen, but also from the fear and exhaustion that began to creep into their hearts. One night, when Liam was checking their small, simple house, he found the bedroom window wide open, a sign that someone had entered without permission. "Arya, we have to go." "This is too dangerous," Liam said in a heavy voice. Arya, who was sitting in a chair near the fireplace, felt a wave of anxiety growing in her chest. "But where should we go? I can't leave this baby alone." In the midst of the confusion, the detective contacted them by phone. "I got the latest information. The CEO is getting crazier and might do something extreme. You have to be ready." That night, Liam and Arya sat facing each other, thinking about the uncertain future. They knew this point was a critical moment. Survive and fight, or give up and lose everything. The next day, they begin to pack their essentials and plan an escape to a place far away from Avalon Bay. However, as they prepare, the sound of a car engine roars in the yard. The CEO's henchmen are back, this time more numerous and bolder. A big fight is inevitable. Liam and Arya stand side by side, ready to risk everything for the new life they dream of. That night turned into a battlefield. The sound of doors slamming, chairs falling, and screams filled the air. Liam fought desperately against several men who tried to invade his house. Arya, with a growing belly, hid in the back room holding her breath and gripping fear. She felt her own heartbeat pounding, as if accompanying the waves of chaos outside. Liam managed to defeat one man, but the number of enemies grew. In his panic, he slipped and injured his leg. However, he still got up and tried to protect Arya and the baby who was about to be born. Suddenly, the sound of distant sirens was heard getting closer. It was a sign that the detective and some of his allies were coming to help. The CEO's henchmen panicked and chose to retreat before things got worse. After the situation calmed down, Liam and Arya hugged each other tightly, tears streaming down their cheeks. The fight was not over, but that night they won, for now. Arya looked at Liam with hope. "We have to keep fighting for our baby." Liam nodded. "I promise I will protect you guys until the end." Dawn began to break over Avalon Bay, sweeping away the darkness of a tense night. Liam sat on the small porch of their house, staring at the horizon with a blank but determined gaze. The wound on his leg had not yet fully healed, but what was heavier was the burden he felt inside. Arya, with a growing belly, slowly came out carrying a cup of warm tea. She sat beside Liam, holding his hand gently. "We've had a rough night, but I believe there is a way forward," she said softly. Liam took a deep breath. "I'm scared, Arya. Not just for us, but for the baby you're carrying. This world is harsh, and they won't stop." Arya looked into Liam's eyes with love. "I know, but we have to be strong. For him. Our baby is our hope. A new light in the darkness." They spent the morning planning their next move. The detective, who had become their ally, contacted with good news. There was an investigative journalist interested in their case. This was a great opportunity to lift the veil of darkness that had been covering the CEO's crimes. However, bringing this story to the public was not without risk. Liam and Arya had to prepare for the possible consequences. They knew that their enemies would not stay silent if their secret was revealed. The following days were filled with intense preparation. Arya began giving statements to journalists in secret, while Liam worked hard to gather additional evidence with the help of his fisherman friends. They recorded conversations, took photos, and collected important documents. During the process, they discovered many shocking facts about the corrupt network involving the CEO and various high-ranking officials. The deeper they investigated, the greater the risk they faced. One afternoon, as Arya was returning home from a secret meeting with journalists, she felt something strange. A piercing sense of alertness. Behind the shadows of a small street in Avalon Bay, a group of men followed her steps. Arya quickly ran towards the house, her heart beating fast. Liam, who was waiting at home, immediately closed the door and locked the windows as Arya entered. They knew that this was a sign that the threat was getting real, and they had to act quickly. That night, amidst the false calm, Liam and Arya sat across from each other again, this time with renewed strength. "We will get through this together," Liam said in a firm voice. Arya nodded. "For the future of our baby, and for all who dare to stand up against injustice." The new dawn in Avalon Bay is not just about the warm light of the sun, but also a symbol of new hope for those who dare to stand up against the darkness. The next day, Liam and Arya received an unexpected visit from a young journalist named Maya, who was known to be sharp and brave in exposing major corruption cases. Maya brought the recordings and documents they needed to strengthen their investigative report. In their small living room, the three of them discussed the strategy for spreading the news. Maya explained, "If we can publish this through national and international media, public pressure will force the authorities to act, but you must be prepared to face the risk of a big backlash." Arya held Liam's hand tightly. "We are ready. We have lost a lot so far. We cannot stay silent." Day by day, news began to appear on various platforms. Articles, interviews, and videos showing strong evidence of the CEO's actions and his corruption network. The public began to react, with anger and support for Liam and Arya. However, the pressure also made the enemy increasingly restless. One night, a black car stopped in front of their house. From inside came several well-dressed men who seemed to be watching with great vigilance. Liam felt his blood boiling, but he knew they had to stay calm and vigilant. Maya, who had temporarily moved into their home, continued to help organize meetings with anti-corruption officials and lawyers who were willing to accompany them. Meanwhile, Arya began to feel light contractions. Their baby would soon be born, amidst the storm of resistance they had endured. That day, in a small hospital in Avalon Bay, Arya gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The baby's cries were a small victory amidst the great chaos. Liam looked at his son, his eyes gleaming with emotion. "You are the reason we keep fighting, son." However, they knew this was not the end, but a new chapter of a much bigger struggle. A few weeks after the birth of their baby, the atmosphere in Liam and Arya's small house began to feel warmer, even though the shadow of threat had not completely disappeared. The little baby brought new light, but also a very big responsibility. Liam was increasingly active in working with the legal team and journalists to ensure that the case of the corrupt CEO was not lost among the piles of bureaucracy and intimidation. Arya, even though she had just given birth, remained strong by her husband, acting as an inspiration and protector for their little family. However, the pressure from the enemy was increasingly real. Threatening letters began to arrive, and there was even one night when stones were thrown at the windows of their house. Fear came and went with a burning determination. One afternoon, when Liam was at the port arranging a meeting with the fishermen who were important witnesses, he received a call that changed everything. The voice on the other end of the phone was the detective who had been helping them, giving news that the CEO had been arrested in a major operation. Liam could hardly believe it. All their struggles were starting to bear real fruit. When they returned home, Liam was greeted by Arya's hug and the happy cries of their baby. "We did it, son. Mum and Dad will never give up," Liam whispered. Although this victory brought hope, they knew there was still much to fight for to truly uphold justice. But for now, they deserved to enjoy a peaceful moment with their little family. The morning sun warms Avalon Bay, bringing a new, hopeful atmosphere. Liam, Arya, and their little baby now stand on the threshold of a new chapter in their lives. Their humble home has transformed into a nest of love and strength. After the arrest of a corrupt CEO and his criminal network, their lives slowly begin to improve. Liam finds a steady job at the port, while Arya starts a small business, selling traditional foods she learned from her grandmother in Bali, as a way to stay connected to their cultural roots. However, the biggest changes have occurred within them. Liam, who was once full of anger and fear, has now found peace and confidence as a father and husband. Arya, who has been through so much, is now the epitome of courage and unconditional love. One afternoon, they sit together on the porch of their house, their baby sleeping soundly on Arya's lap. Liam holds Arya's hand, and his gaze is fixed on the bright horizon. "We've been through the darkest storms," Liam said softly. "And I know that with you guys, I can face anything." Arya smiled. This isn't just the end of our struggle, but the beginning of everything. We have a beautiful future, son. The little baby made a soft sound, as if he understood that this world is a place full of challenges, but also full of love. Their story is not only about struggle, but also about hope, courage, and love that can change lives. Liam and Arya prove that even in the darkness, there is always light waiting to be found.